Live from our studio in Babson Park, Massachusetts, it's the Fred Opie Show, where we unpack history to positively impact the future. I am Fred Opie, your host. Thanks for joining us live or listening to the podcast. My guest today is Cornell alum and Hall of Famer Bob Rule, a native of Natick, Massachusetts. Bob Rule left Massachusetts for Manhasset, New York, as a high school sophomore, where he began playing lacrosse in 1964. He went on to play collegiate lacrosse at Cornell University, where he earned a degree in economics. He is the only player in Division I history to win national championship in two sports, folks, lacrosse and hockey. He earned All-American honors at Cornell before going on to earn a teaching certification in 1973 from Hofstra University and a spot on the 1974 U.S. national team. Rule taught history and coached lacrosse with Hall of Famer Alan Lowe at his alma mater, Manhasset High School, for 40 years. I call Bob Rule the Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Willy Wonka of lacrosse for his contributions to lacrosse as an inventor of sticks and equipment. Bob, thanks for coming in on the show and allowing us to unpack your oral history.
Well, thank you, Fred. I want to say I just want to have a little bit of the money that those guys have from what I did, but I had a lot of satisfaction of doing it.
What's the oldest genealogy you know about either your maternal or paternal side of your family?
I have a picture of my great-grandmother, my grandmother's mom, which was taken in 1875. My grandmother died. She was 90. Cars were just starting. No airplanes. And she lived in a little town called Moortown, Vermont, which is now a ghost town. And my dad, my grandmother was from Canada, Montreal, Canada. But my dad was, I would like to get this in, he was a baseball player, loved baseball, played it. I became a lacrosse player. Until he passed away, he did not understand what offsides was, but always very supportive and enjoyed the game.
Was he a noted athlete, or were there any other Hall of Fame type athletes like yourself?
Well, all my brothers are good athletes. I had a brother who played hockey at BC and played lacrosse there, my brother Dick. Both my brother Paul and my brother Jack also were hockey players. I love the story about the Depression. My grandfather had left my grandmother and my father and my aunt, Doris. So my father went to high school in Worcester, outside of Worcester, Mass. He was the sports editor of the yearbook, and he could not afford to buy one. They wouldn't give him one.
Wow.
So he never had a yearbook. So for his 75th birthday, I went to Worcester, I went to the library, and I Xeroxed. I got the yearbook. I Xeroxed the entire yearbook for him. Then I went back. He was a shortstop, pretty good hitting shortstop, as I find from reading it. And I went back and I Xeroxed the Worcester Telegram, every single article I could find that had him, and I gave it to him for his birthday. Never complained. I mean, my father was typical, I think, of a lot of Depression people. He started working when he was 12 years old to help my grandmother. Never complained and would tell me one story I always remembered, Fred. He said one day my grandmother, who was alone, said to my father, "Do me a favor, will you wash the floor, the kitchen floor?" It's like my grandmother worked 6 days a week. Well, my father blew it off and went off and did something with his friends. When he came back, my grandmother was on her knees washing the floor. And I always remember that story about how you treat people. And my father told the story. So I remember that when you want to blow something off that someone asks you to do. And it always, you can see now, it even gets to me now when I think about it. My dad was a good baseball player, a great man, a great role model for me.
You mentioned several siblings. Where were you in the pecking order?
Number one, baby. Number one. You know what that means? If you did something, you should know better. The younger brother does it. He's young, so what? They get away with murder, and I get away with nothing. So that's how I kind of look at it.
Psychologist Kevin Lehman has a book called The Birth Order. In the book, he talks about the different characteristics of the birth order. And he said with the number one, and I'm a baby, and I'm married to a firstborn.
Oh, my goodness.
And firstborns tend to be bossy. They tend to be overachievers. Most of the presidents that we've had have been firstborns.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, most of the presidents.
I didn't know that.
Would you describe yourself as an overachiever?
Oh, definitely. Look at me, Fred. Yeah, I mean, come on. Look at this body. I'm like this kind of, I often sometimes say when I give a speech, I say, yeah, I've done pretty good for like a chubby, slow kid. My joke used to be in the crease, you have 4 seconds guy in the crease. I would throw the ball because to run that 5 yards, I would never make it out in time. So I really do think I was an overachiever, and I think through my whole life, it really helped me because I would work hard. And honestly, I was a goalie, and I would get in a game, and I'd look down the field, let's say at the Yale goal, and I said, listen, baby, to myself, I worked harder than you, and I deserve to win this game. And that would be my attitude. Whenever I went to a game, I said, I know I worked harder than you. That might be a lie, I don't know. But that was my attitude. And I think that's the overachievers kind of thing where you go, I work for this. Mm-hmm. I worked hard for this, and I worked harder than you did, and I deserve it. And it becomes an attitude, you know, and I think that's really true. I think I was an overachiever.
In Natick, you were thoroughly entrenched in hockey?
I was a starting goalie as a sophomore, and I was a better hockey goalie than lacrosse goalie. The reason being is that Natick had hockey like the PAL programs, the little kid comets they were called. And I started very young, and I loved it. You were talking about being an overachiever. I would go to the Needham rink, and I would go there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the comets practiced all day long, all the teams. I said, do you mind if I go stand in the corner there and just work out? And they were nice about it when they were practicing. If you need a goalie, I'd be happy to do it. And I would stand there, and like a lot of things I did with lacrosse, instinct is so important. You got to know where you are in the cage at all times. And how do you get that instinct? You get in the cage and you figure out, like, a hockey goal is 6 feet wide. So you go from one end to the other and you look up, where am I in comparison? And I learned in hockey to instinctively know where I'm standing. I did the same in lacrosse. You tap your stick, you look, and eventually I knew where I was in the goal without having to constantly look over my shoulder. So I played hockey and I worked hard. And my sophomore year, I was the most valuable player the very first time.
Wow.
My dream was go to Harvard and be the Harvard goalie. Then the Bruins will draft me. I'll play for the Bruins. That was my, you're 14. That was my goal. Well, my dad got transferred, and we went to Manhasset. There was no hockey in the area. So there was not, now there is, but there wasn't that. I was very depressed about it because my big career's gone. I'm going to meet a lot of people I don't, you have to meet new people. It's hard in high school, connect. But the people were great to me in Manhasset. The kids were great. I played football. I connected there. Then I became lacrosse goalie.
Who introduced you to lacrosse?
We'll start with the Martosi family. Very famous within Manhasset as the people, the whole family was involved in lacrosse. The dad was coached the Little League guys. The uncle was one of the first refs. And I would give every credit for Manhasset's success for the longest time was that we had the first PAL program.
For those that don't know it, that's Police Athletic League in Nassau County.
Right, and that's for young kids, as young as 7. We had the very first one. I didn't have to teach a kid to catch and throw in the 10th grade. I got a kid, Al and I were coaching, we got kids who had been playing for 6 years. So we would oftentimes have teams that were not as athletic as, let's say, a Massapequa, some of the bigger high schools, but we had better lacrosse skills. And the Martosis, to back up, he was one of the founders of the PAL League. So his sons played. So Victor, I played football with Victor, and Victor said to me, well, there's no hockey, why don't you play lacrosse? I'd never seen a game. And I said, yeah, okay, all right, I'll try. It's a goalie, and I like being a goalie. So Victor and his brother, I mean, think about it now. It's like whitewashing the fence. They had someone to shoot at every day, someone who wanted to get in the goal. Wow. Most of the time, nobody wants to get into the, especially lacrosse where you don't really wear any protection. I had a chest protector, but no for arms. But I liked it. And I got in, and they shot at me, and they worked with me. And then one of the really extraordinary people in my life, Renzi Lamb, who became the lacrosse coach when I was a junior at Manhasset and later went on to great fame at Williams College. Renzi was a wonderful guy. He knew that I was going to be the goalie. So we would go up to the high school on a Sunday, and he'd shoot at me for an hour or two. Then we'd play catch and stuff. And then the season started, and this is 1965, I think, 66. At that time period, you didn't know other kids. Nowadays, every kid knows everybody in lacrosse throughout the country. But then you just knew your kids. I didn't know Garden City. I didn't know other teams. Colleges started later. So I like to tell the story that we had scrimmages, but I never went to a college game. So I would play our first game against Freeport High School. I'm in the goal, and I'm going, I've never seen a game before. I was playing the first game I ever saw. It had folded in front of me. Wow. And I think we won 4-2, and they took 2 shots on me. I don't remember stopping much. But it was the start of my career. And nowadays you couldn't do what I did because the game is just so much more advanced. But that's how I started. Renzi really worked with me, and Gave me a lot of confidence. The Martosi boys, Billy and Victor, were the guys that got me going, and that's how my career started. And it's funny, Fred. I mean, if I had not gone to Manhasset, my whole life really has revolved as a central piece. Lacrosse, traveled the world in lacrosse, made enough money to do certain things, the house on Block Island. Lacrosse and, coaching and having fun. I coached 600 games. I mean, wow. I just saw something like that, 650 games. And I had a great time. I never worked, Fred, I've never worked a day in my life and got paid for it. Years later, I realized how lucky I was to be able to move to a town like Manhasset.
Went on to Cornell. And while you were there, hockey came back into your life. You became the first Division I athlete to win 2 national championships.
He did a wonderful piece with Bruce Cohen. One of the greatest players I ever saw. He'd still be a great player today. Talk about aggressive. He was a great soccer player, by the way, too. Between my junior and senior in high school, junior year we were 13-5, and I did okay, but still didn't know the game like you would hope by then, and I knew it. Well, Manhasset in the summer, they had a team, summer league teams for the college players. Big deal. I mean, Jones Beach and the whole big deal. All the best players would play. There was a Manhasset player named Garth Weber who was at Rutgers at the time, college guy, great player, wonderful man. Garth, they had their goalie was a guy named Mike McMahon. He's the goalie at Brown, but he was working on Wall Street and he couldn't make practice. They had practice Tuesday and Thursdays. So he didn't have a goalie. So Garth said, I'd go down to high school and Garth would shoot at me a little bit if I was there and I would practice throwing. So he says, you want to be our practice goalie? I said, sure. It was perfect. I went and played. I'm with these college guys. So everything's faster. You learn faster. When I played hockey, I did the same thing. I was 13 years old, and whenever anybody needed a goalie, I was playing with college kids. Every step of the way, really what happens, the game gets faster. So I was at that thing where I was kind of advancing. So now, to my junior and senior in high school, I am the practice goalie. But I would treat it like a game. I'd get there, and I'd be ready to go, and I'd thinking about it and what I'm going to work on. One of the players for the team was Bruce Cohen. And Bruce, of course, was at Cornell. And right away, when he had the ball, he was something special. Great rider. I kind of walked out of the goal one day and got clubbed from behind. Perfectly, they go, Bruce reminded me that before you walk out, you better look all around. And he's a great shooter. But Bruce saw something in me. That was a time period nobody recruited. I mean, not like today. And Bruce saw something in me and recommended that to me to Ned Harkness, who at the time was the hockey and lacrosse coach. So Ned came to visit me, and I got interested. I didn't know. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I went up to visit. I really liked it. And my father, when Ned came to visit, my father said, Bob was a really good hockey player. And Ned kind of said, oh, great. But, he had all Canadian kids, and that was it. He left coaching lacrosse, became a full-time hockey coach. But still, I was there now, and Richie Moran came. I was Richie's first goalie. He came from Elmont. I was his first class, but also I went back to coach at Manhasset where he started.
So he was at Manhasset, then went to Elmont, then went to Cornell.
Sophomore year, I was the starting lacrosse goalie. We did well, won the Ivy League championship. We lost a couple of games, but we had a good young group of kids. During the exam week in the middle of the year, you cannot have regular practices. You can only have practice where guys get out and kind of, play, but the coaches can't coach, can't be formal. Well, Ned Harkness, of course, middle of the season, wants his guys skating every day. Well, a fraternity brother of mine was a guy named Kenny Dryden.
Montreal Canadiens Hall of Fame goalie.
Who everybody in Boston hates because he really is a nemesis to the Bruins. He wanted to go out and play forward and skate up and down, but the team said, nah, we need a goalie. You either get someone to play or you can't do it. So he comes to me and he goes, because we had talked, and he goes, you're a hockey goalie, you want to play? And I'm going, well, my exams are done. I go, yeah, I'll go. It was fun. So putting his stuff on, I look like Clarabelle the Clown. I mean, he's size 14 foot, and I have his stuff on. His pads are huge. And I get in the goal. Now, Ned would watch the practice. Couldn't coach, but he'd watch. So I did this 3 or 4 times. So I'm in the goal, no pressure, and I'm having fun, making saves. I made some saves and had some fun. And then when it was over, I forgot about it. So at the end of my sophomore year, Ned comes to me. I get it. I run into Ken Dryden. Ken goes, Ned wants to talk to you. And I go to see him. He goes, I need a hockey goalie next year. You want to play? The kid we were expecting to play, the freshman goalie, is going to be on some Canadian national team. He's not coming back for a sophomore year. Would you like to play? You get a training table and you can play and stuff. And I wasn't going to be the starter. I knew that. But you'd play. I ended up playing like 6 or 7 games. I said, well, I got to talk to Richie first, Moran. But Richie knew I always liked hockey. And the season ended much earlier than it does now. I would not be able to do it now because lacrosse starts in February, and hockey's still not over. Lacrosse practice was at 9:00 at night in the Boulevard. And so he said, no, you can go to those practices, and then you'll have hockey from 4:30 to 6. That's when practice was. So Richie said, sure, you can do it. I played in the original scrimmages. By the time I got my own equipment and stuff, I was pretty good. I go on the team. I'm the only American on the team. I got a standing ovation wherever I went because I was an American. The other goalie was Brian Cropper. I felt that, if I went in, I'd do pretty good, and I did. I played in, I think, 7 games, and I gave a couple goals here and there, but I felt that if they needed me, I think I could have done it. The character in a Woody Allen film, Zelig, he seems to be in the right place every time. So I go to play on a hockey team. What hockey team do I play on? The team most people consider the greatest team ever, 29-0-0. First and only team in Division I ever to go undefeated. Undefeated, untied, national champs. And I had the best seat in the house for every game. Right at the end of the bench, there I was watching the game. We had guys that went on and played. The hockey guys, they live life to the fullest. I'm telling you. And I figured that half those guys would be dead by 30. We're having our reunion. Every one of them is still alive. Everyone. I'm going, this can't be. I said, these guys partied like you couldn't imagine. They're one of the greatest lacrosse players ever go to Cornell. Joey Neuendijk was the player of the year in one of the big lacrosse leagues up there. Love lacrosse. But, of course, hockey paid a little more, so he never played lacrosse at Cornell. Great hockey. He
on the teams you played on or after?
No, he's after me. Joey Neuendijk, Ken Dryden are the only 2 hockey numbers that are retired. But he was a great player. Great NHL career. He left Cornell at the end of, I think, his sophomore, junior year and came back and got his degree. He was a terrific NHL player. Scored 50 goals a couple of times. I mean, he was a really good player and became a general manager and stuff. But he was a great lacrosse player. People don't even realize that. He never played.
How did you and your family pay for your Cornell education?
I was fortunate. My father basically paid. But we all worked. Worked my freshman year. I worked for Mr. Avedisian delivering flowers. Then my sophomore and junior year, I worked on the John Hay Whitney estate. Unbelievable. I mean, there's 600 acres in Manhasset, a horse farm. I worked for Mr. Richardson. All I did was take care of the flowers. And there were 2 acres of flowers in the greenhouse. That's what I did. So at the end of my junior year, I go, I'm saving my money. I say, I'm going to ask my dad if I can get a car, with the money I'm saving up. I've done pretty well. I'm going to be a senior. It'd be nice to have a car. Cornell campus is spread out. So at the end of the summer, I go, Dad, I'd like, if I could, rather than give you the money, because we had to give him the money at the end of the time. Could I get a car? I can get around. I can come visit you. I figure I'm going to have to fight him with it. He goes, no, you want a car? Get a car, Bob. No problem. Really? He goes, yeah, but whatever you pay for the car, I'm subtracting for your tuition. Now, I worked at Sigma Phi. He said, you can become a breakfast waiter at Sigma Phi. Get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and every day do it. He said, and you have to pay, of course, for your own gas, your insurance, and any repairs, all on you. So you'll have to earn extra money there. Well, needless to say, Fred, I did not have a car. And the funny thing, by not having a car, I don't know the name of streets up in Ithaca because I never drove.
Bob, if you were going to create a required course to graduate from college and to get ready for life, and you could create that course and the syllabus in the way you want, what would be some essentials now that you've lived and you've experienced life and say, I wish I had known? What would you put in your course?
What a great question. I think there are a couple components to it. And I started doing it when I taught economics. One is the practical way to handle money. It's amazing. People who make tons of money have no idea how to invest it, what to invest, how to look at it. Most of the time now, especially with no pensions, that you have to learn how to handle your money. So I would teach you part of the course would be how to, look at a mutual fund and how to read what it is and look at it, and you're in for the long haul and the whole bit. That Warren Buffett, the great, maybe the greatest of all investors in the market, he says he's told everybody his secret. And they go, and my class will go, what's that, Mr. Rule? I'll tell you. You buy when people want to sell, you sell when people want to buy. Most people do the opposite. People start panicking, they sell when they shouldn't. People start buying when things are already at the top. I would have that part. I would have an ethics part. I'd have an ethics part where I say in the long run in your life, your ethics will catch up to you. I don't care what it is. I don't care what the circumstances are. If you are not an ethical person, it will catch up to you. And I would say that, to me, the basis of most ethical things is empathy. Empathy. You must know how you have to try to put yourself in the place of someone you're dealing with and try to understand why they're acting, they're good or bad, and act upon it. I would combine the idea of the ethics and the idea of empathy, and certainly I would talk about certain historical events that I think are incredibly important to understand. My dad, who served in World War II, I said, you have to understand the sacrifices that people have made to give us the life that we have, to give us a chance to live in a country like the United States. My wife is the last of 13 children. One of the twins is my brother-in-law, Brian. They came from a working-class family in Uniondale. Money was tight in the family. Brian was an excellent lacrosse player. Brian worked his way through Nassau Community. He worked at a bar at night and went there, played lacrosse. Richie Moran, who I honestly feel that Richie really has an affinity because I think he came from a real working-class Irish family, too. And so Richie kind of took him under his wing. His grades were good enough. He got into Cornell. Brian had to work his way through. Fred, you can get a shot to be successful. You have to be ready to take advantage of it. And I used to say to kids in Manhasset, because I'm from Manhasset, I would go, I said, being born here in Manhasset, most of us are on third base, just waiting to come home. That's a little push. You got 100 people on Wall Street who'll give you a job after college, getting into college. A lot of you don't have to pay for it. The money's not away. You're on third base. I said, well, there are people that barely get to the plate, and they have just as much ability as you do. So you better always appreciate, get down on your hands and knees and kiss your parents' feet because you have advantages like that. And what was good is because I was from Manhasset, I could kind of get away with it, that kind of thing. Like they can't say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, I did know what I was talking about. And so I certainly would include, I said, ethics, history, economics, and try to combine those things. Morality is so important. To do something wrong is to erode your own morality. I think erode who you are and what you are. And I always say that to people. It'll catch up to you. It's going to catch up to you. I'm in my economics class.
I don't think I've ever had a guest on the show that, like myself, is an educator. So when I ask that question, it's very theoretical for many people.
Sure. And
your experience, you've actually done this.
Yeah.
And I know as a college professor, teacher of history, I have purposely incorporated components like you're talking about into my class. Yeah. But I'm also listening to my guest, and at some point in the future, we'll collect the answers to that about what would you put in your course and try to either or both create a course like that specifically and or a book about that, because there's been some really rich answers over the years when I asked that question. The name Richie Moran has come up several times. You had him for 4 years. He's another Hall of Fame. What makes Richie Moran remembered as such an amazing coach?
Richie, when he goes into a room, it's like his room. And he has this amazing ability to communicate. When you talk to him, you and he are talking. He is there. He's there for you. Everybody else disappears in the room. He's there for you. His memory. Holy mackerel. I remember meeting you when you're 1978. You're a high school kid. You had blue shorts on that day. Why were you wearing blue shorts? He's amazing. So his grasp of stuff like that. And then if you meet him, don't you feel confident? This guy gives you confidence. I think all of those things got put together. He's very empathetic. When you play for Richie and you watch when he talks to people, you don't know who's the star and who's the guy struggling to stay on the team. He treats you the same way. It was great. And Renzi Land, because Renzi and Richie had something in common. They were both Marines. He was tough in a way that made you ready for things, made you confident you can play. Call you at 3 a.m. if you weren't doing well, call you and say how you doing.
When Richie was the head coach at Cornell, there are legions of kids that he recruits through Nassau.
Yes.
Norm Inglekeey, Kevin Cook. Richie liked a certain kind of kid.
I think that's the key. Lunch pail players, blue-collar players. They're tough, had to work. There were no excuses. You know, you come from a family of 12 or 13, you're going to have to learn how to live your life and accept what's going on. And I think he loved players like that. Kevin Cook's a great example of what lacrosse can do and Cornell can do and what lacrosse can do. Very successful broker. What Cornell and what lacrosse, but particularly what lacrosse can do for people. As you know, the network is incredible. That, to me, as the years have gone on, I don't care whether you won a championship. I don't care whether you were a starter or you didn't, in my opinion. I just remember the bus rides, freezing cold days. And how is it when, because you know at Syracuse, you come in on a freezing cold day and you go take a hot shower. What's better than that? The things I remember, I don't remember very much about games, but I do remember singing on the bus and fooling around in the locker room a little bit, having fun in practice. Glenn Mueller would tell you, I used to laugh when they'd shoot at me in practice and I make a save. I go, come on, you're better than that. You can shoot better than that, can't you? Then, of course, the next week, drill me. That's what I miss more than anything.
The show will be right back. For related content on negotiating the world of school and sports, visit our website at fredopie.com. Check out our podcast archive and review the show on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. Hey listeners, we want to make you aware of the Jim Brown 56 Lacrosse Challenge. Donate $56 or more to the Uganda Lacrosse Foundation at ugandalacrosse.org. 56 was Brown's Syracuse lacrosse jersey number. Purchase a copy of my lacrosse memoir/career advice book, Start With Your Gift. Post a picture of you holding your copy of the book on Instagram and tag me, and I will donate 10% of the proceeds of your purchase to the Uganda Lacrosse Foundation. It will advance the initiative of getting lacrosse into the Olympics. For that to happen, lacrosse has to exist on all the continents on the globe, and Africa is the last frontier. Your tax-free donation will go a long ways in helping spread lacrosse from not just being the fastest game in the United States, but the fastest growing game across the world. Be a difference maker right now. Purchase 2 or more paperback copies of Start With Your Gift. Give them away and make a positive impact on someone's life. The book is available in digital form as an ebook and audiobook. Welcome back to this edition of the Fred Opie Show. When did inventing start with you? I'm sure it wasn't in the 1970s, but when did you start become I should have said, this is the Thomas Edison of lacrosse technology.
First of all, when I was a kid, I loved building model planes and ships. I loved putting things together, creative that way. And I had a shop, and I'd work on it. We had a sailboat, and I'd work on that. And the first thing I did was the big goalie stick, the spatula-looking goalie stick. We're going on the USA team, and it was just the beginning of the plastic sticks. So they hand me a goalie stick that's triangular plastic, right, with a wood shaft. And I ended up using my old wood stick anyway, so I was more comfortable with it. But I got to thinking, I said, the reason they do the wood stick, that triangular thing, is because you only bend the wood one way. You can't really make it any other shape. But plastic, you can make any shape you want. You make the mold. So I'd always known the rules of lacrosse said that a goalie stick cannot be 12 inches wide at any point on the stick, more than 12 inches. I said, but it doesn't say the shape. So if I made a stick, the pizza spatula, the one that they go in and get a pizza and come out, notice the shape of it. It's got that round thing. I'm going, boy, if I made a stick like that, it would be wider where you actually stop the ball. You don't stop the ball at the top, you stop in the middle somewhere. It's the only time in my entire life that I use geometry. I got a piece of paper, a big piece of drawing paper, put the stick down that was a triangular stick, and then started kind of drawing to make it pleasing, a stick that was wider in the middle. So with the geometry, I made the stick 40% bigger, and according to the rules, it was still perfectly legal. To the rules committee, you have to get these approved. And my argument was, everything's been for offensive guys. Give the goalie a break. Give him a stick like this. And they agreed. So then Bobby Shaw, who was a teammate of mine, worked for Brian. Brian was in Needham here at the time.
We're in Wellesley, Mass., which borders with the town of Needham. The original Brian headquarters in fabrication was right here where we're talking.
I went with them, and they loved it. They said, we want to patent this. We'll patent it, and then I'd license it to them. That's what they did. The goalie stick was the first thing. But then I realized something, the Superlight 2. So they're telling me, you got any other ideas? I said, well, I do have an idea. I realized a stick could be 6 3/4 inches wide, but no, it could not be any smaller. So I said, And the brides were telling me, I said, how do you make these sticks? He says, well, you take it, there's a mold, and you take it out of the mold. You have to put in a jig and drill all the holes, right? So I'm saying, boy, if you could get rid of that step of drilling the holes. They can't go horizontally in a mold, but they go vertically. So I said, if you put a little tab in the middle, a tab in there, drill a hole vertically through the tab, make it the shape like two camel's humps, so the sidewall string won't slip. You could make it, as long as it's 6 3/4, just below that, you could put a 1/4 inch tab, and reduce the size of the stick by 1/2 inch to throw with, which hopefully increases accuracy, but it still stays 6 3/4 wide to catch with. So that's what I did. I made a drawing and did that, and the result is the Superlight 2. Everybody complains in the winter how their sticks break. The sticks were made, I think maybe they still are, from a material from DuPont called Untitled B. Untitled B is hygroscopic, meaning it has water in it. Well, in the winter, it's not the cold that breaks them. They dry out. Take your stick and put it at the end of the shower when you go in. You have a big shower room. The steam will keep your stick, and we didn't have any breakage. Now, the brides weren't anxious to tell people that because they want to sell more sticks. But I made sure my kids knew.
Bob, how old are you now?
70.
So how do you keep your soul, your mind, your will, and your emotions strong?
I'm a much better person now than I was even 10 years ago. I went through a terrible thing 10 years ago. My wife and I separated. My daughter and I still haven't really reconciled. So I went through a real, authentic, creative process. Who the heck am I? And what am I doing? I'm 60 years old. At this time, I was 60. Still teaching. Yeah, I retired when I was 65. I said, I can't go on this way. I'll be dead. I'll be dead. I'm depressed. I'm discouraged. I weighed 44 pounds more than I do now. I gradually said, it's your life. You have to take charge of it. You're allowing outside factors and you're allowing other things to take charge of it. I became much more spiritual. I had to turn my life around and say, okay, what's really important? Well, you know something? I'm going to church. There's nothing like sitting in a church to give you the environment. Be empathetic, support people who are less advantaged, have less advantage for you. So that became very important to me. I said, I need this. I need to be spiritual. I need to think about things. And I need to take care of myself. So that's been very important to me. Reconnecting with friends in a real authentic way. I went to the 70th reunion. I couldn't go because I was coaching. Well, I was the first one I went to. The third string goalie, Hank Olivier. And how Hank was not a very good goalie. So it was myself and Bobby Beeman got most of the repetitions. But you know something? For 3 years, Hank was there every day. Hank worked hard every day. Hank did all the things that you want him to do. And they stood on the sidelines and didn't play. And as the years go by, I would say, could I have played if I couldn't have been an All-American or an All-Ivy or a starter? What do you think, Bob? What do you really think? I would say to myself, probably not. I said, and look at Hank Olivier. Every day for 3 years, this guy went out there and he practiced, never complained, and talked about time. It was cheerful, nice. I said, you know something? He's more of an athlete than I am. More of an athlete than I am. He played truly for the love of the sport. Truly, he loved being out there. But that's the way I feel. I said, if I could go back, Fred, honestly, knowing what I know now, make me an average guy, but let me appreciate a beautiful spring day. Let me appreciate how I feel now. Let me feel that way then. Say, yeah, I'd do it. I'd go back, could be an average player, and enjoy it. Just enjoy it for what it is. And I wrapped up too much about All-American. Too much of who I was not invested in the sport. It's invested in what the sport's giving me.
You mentioned that you lost 45 pounds. How did you do it?
I read something very simple. Eat 2,000 calories, you'll maintain your weight if you're an adult. Eat more, you'll gain. Eat less, you won't. I buy these dinners. I won't mention them. I won't make like an ad. They're 250 calories, and they're low in salt. They're high in protein. I make my own little concoction shake, which I really like. It's about 500 calories. I will have, for lunch, I'll have a salad. And for dinner, I'll have one of these dinners that take me 6 minutes to make them. I will feel full, and I'll have it. And then I'll sit, all right, who's in charge, Bob? So what happens is I stop. And every so often, do I slide? Absolutely. If I want to have a steak one night, I have it. Then the next night I go a little bit easy. And that way I don't feel any guilt. No, you just go back. And that's the way I've become.
If you could have a superpower, which one would you want and why?
Super strength would be great to have because then I could use it to help people. So I would think I would go for something like that. Nothing too complicated.
Dinner with 3 people, dead or alive. Who would you want to have dinner with?
Christ. I'd love to have dinner with him. Find out what's going on. Theodore Roosevelt, because I was a member of the Theodore Roosevelt Association, and I was actually the finance chairman. And he's a fascinating man. I think he represents to me, he was a sickly child who, he had asthma. They didn't think he was going to live. And he just, by his own sheer willpower, willed himself into being a wrestler and big. Had an incredible tragedy in his life. On Valentine's Day, his mother died. And next door, his wife died in childbirth on the same day. He had a huge thing to recover from, which he did. And the third one, I would have said Jimmy Brown, because I feel the great athlete of the 20th century, without a doubt. In Nassau County, he still holds the record for the most points per game in basketball. He was a walk-on basketball player at Syracuse. Not to mention his track and the other stuff. But I've had dinner with him. I think Babe Ruth. Because for whatever you think, he's in the pantheon of these special people. So those 3, I would get Christ, President, I get an athlete.
Kindest thing someone's ever done for you?
My mom and dad raised me right. My dad worked. He came to the games when he could come. My mother worked. She had 4 boys to raise. So, and she could come. She'd come she would come. But my father never once, and all the years I played, all the sports I played, ever said anything but nice game. Nice game. Always wanted to play catch with me. And my mother, she was a hard worker. They put money away for us for college. That was the number one thing for them. Never complained. So I had an Aunt Doris, and she had 5 children. Her husband had left. Unfortunately, he was an alcoholic, and they weren't seeing each other. She got breast cancer. She couldn't work. She couldn't do anything. My uncle couldn't do anything. So my father was raising 9 children in 2 households. I never heard about it till years later. He never complained. He never said a word. That, to me, is a real hero. So I'd say my mom and dad doing things like that, giving me the chance to go to Cornell, giving me the chance to do things that otherwise I might not have ever been able to do.
What's your highlight in your life?
The day my daughter was born, because I was old. I was 50. Now, the other highlights, we'll go athletic, was winning the Long Island Championship when no one expected us to win. Winning the first national championship was unbelievable in lacrosse. First one for anybody, 71. Of course, winning the World Games. And then coaching, I coached almost 700 games, and we won. We were in the state finals 8 times, won 4, ranked number 1 in the country one year in 2004. But I would say the highlight, how many great kids that I coach. How much fun was it to be on a beautiful day in the spring and you're out, coaching. I'm with Al. I mean,
I have to pause you. I interviewed Alan. Yeah, I'm going to argue this. Mm-hmm. You guys probably had the greatest coaching staff at any level. The lacrosse IQ between you two, offensive guy, defensive guy, the ability to get through the kids, it's incredible to think about. Did you, while you were in that coaching relationship with him, did you guys realize what you had, or was it only after it was over? You're like freaking Brady and Belichick.
Well, thank you. Al and I were together, I think, 32 years coaching, and we were teammates on the Long Island Athletic Club and then the USA team. I would say if marriages were like Alan and me, no one would ever get divorced. You'd be happy. He is a great coach. He was a great boss because I was the defensive coordinator and Al was the head guy. Al would always listen to my opinion. He would always talk about it. He never dismissed me ever during our career. Occasionally, I would say, well, can we try this? He goes, well, I really don't want to. I want to do this. I never took it as a personal affront. I would say, it's Al's team. Al makes certain decisions. Most of them are great. We got along terrific. Every so often I go, got the only team that has 2 Hall of Famers coaching them. That's pretty good. With Al, one of the hardest times of my life was when Al left. He's 5 years older than I am. We're friends, but we never did things together. And they go, or hardly ever, because he was married with 2 kids. Yeah. And I was single at the time. I didn't get married until I was 40. And so our lives were different. We were great friends, but he was a wonderful guy to work with. And when he left, I got depressed. I never wanted to be the head coach. You know why? You don't get the hassle from the parents. You don't have to go to meetings. You just coach. That to me was the perfect job. But when Al left, I got depressed because it was such an end of an era.
It sounds like this is when the stuff hit the fan
It did.
personally.
Oh, absolutely.
All this is
your world is, you felt like a huge part of your world was coming to an end. Thank you for this session.
I don't charge my guests.
Appreciate it. But, and I was shocked because Al and I had been together for so long. I mean, we were partners, and that made me feel old.
Wow.
That made me feel old. And then I looked around and started feeling sorry for myself. Where'd my life go? Oh my God, I could have done this. Could have done that. And I got depressed. And I had to work myself out of it as part of my thing, acknowledge it and work my way out. But that was the way I felt with Al. He and I had been joined at the hip for, 35 years. What's it going to be like without him? And then all of a sudden he's not in the school, so I can't walk down and talk to him about what's practice going to be like the next day or today or something. So that was tough.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about Manhattan's historic African-American community?
Well, there are a couple of things about it. Most of the people who lived there originally were servants out in Kings Point and Sands Point, Manhasset. It was a lot of, I think, the Portuguese and so on who came in, but later they were displaced by the African-Americans. Not true today. Believe it or not, it's Asian now. They bought the houses and redone them, and the neighborhoods changed tremendously in Latino. But during that time period, the 50s and 60s, there's that TV show, The White Shadow. Well, The White Shadow was played by Ken Howard. Ken Howard was a Manhasset graduate. He played a basketball coach in an inner city school where all his players were African American. He played at Manhasset, and when he played at Manhasset in the 50s, he was the only white guy on the team. The other were African American. And if you watch the show, the colors are orange and blue like Manhasset. All the nicknames of the players are Manhasset nicknames. And he and Paltrow, Gwyneth Paltrow's father, Bruce Paltrow, they were the producers. And they said, this is not negotiable. It will be Manhasset colors. And Ken Howard played the coach as Glenn Mueller's father, Fritz, who was the basketball coach there. They got together and did the show. And most Manhasset people said, oh, that's, it's about Manhasset. Manhasset was involved in a landmark lawsuit. And the lawsuit was de facto segregation. The argument was that there was a school down in the Valley School, and there were two schools, Muncie Park and Shelter Rock, Muncie Park at that time and Plainham Road School. And just because of the way the population was set up, the Valley School, the majority of the Valley School was African American. And they filed a suit and said, well, even though you don't mean it, you still have form of segregation. Went all the way, I think, to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the NAACP. Manhasset shut the school down, and then the students were redistributed up to the Plainham Road School and Muncie Park School. It was right around the time of Jim Brown. Jim Brown, he loves Manhasset. If you said to him, what about Ed Walsh and Ken Malloy and guys like that, he had nothing but the nicest things to say about them. He would come back every so often. He would speak at the school. They named an athletic field after him now. That's down below. Those guys. The famous story is Ken Malloy and the town foot the bill for his first year at Syracuse. And Schwartzwalder, I know he was a war hero, but I think he was a racist. Jimmy Brown, they wanted to make him a guard. He said no, and they were going to send him home. Or that's not. He was going to come home, and Ken Malloy went up and said, "Stick it out for a year," and he did. And then later on, I said Dick Schaap, when Jim Brown did not win the Heisman Trophy, Dick Schaap never voted in the Heisman Trophy voting again after that. He said it was a travesty that Jim Brown was not the winner of it. Have you ever seen the film Number 32, Spike Lee's film on Jim Brown?
Documentary. Yes.
Well, I have a story that goes to that. One day, we're on the front field where Jim Brown played football and lacrosse, and that's where we played lacrosse for a long time. And we're playing a team. Generally you're looking where the ball is. So I'm looking where the ball is. I glance over my shoulder at the team, and everybody in the team's looking the other way. I go, what's going on? Why aren't they watching the game? I look over in the corner, and there's Jim Brown with Spike Lee. I was coaching. It was during a game. So I'm going, they're all looking at him, and I said, come on, focus. So later, I had the privilege of sitting with Ed Walsh, who had been Jim's football coach, a couple other guys, Glenn Mueller's dad, Fritz,
Okay.
and Spike Lee and Jim Brown, and they talked about, Jim's experiences at Manhasset. And he just was so positive about Ed Walsh. And when Ed Walsh retired, and Jim Brown had just stopped playing football then, every bit the big star at the time. Jimmy Brown cried. He put his arm around Ed Walsh, and he said, "This is the man who made me who I am today. This is the man who showed me, what life should be like," and so on. And there wasn't a dry eye in the whole place. Well, Jimmy Brown is the kind of guy, you don't think this, but these guys get paid to do it, and he was there for Ed, and it was fantastic. I'll never forget the interview with Frank Gifford, who himself, of course, is a great football player. And they said to Frank Gifford, "Give us the 3 best football players you've ever played with, played against or with." He goes, "That's easy. Jim Brown, Jim Brown, Jim Brown." So the students were redistributed amongst Muncie Park and Shelter Rock. Guys like Tiny Crawford, Whitey Adams, they met now as first graders, not as 7th graders, going in. And so you had this whole different dynamics going on where the African-American kids were not isolated till the 7th grade now. They were up playing. We had more and more African-Americans playing in lacrosse, which is what we wanted. And these guys became wonderful, wonderful friends. Whitey ended up at Naval Academy, capped. Tiny went Point.
Boys West Point first.
Right, they went to Hobart.
That's the last question. You've written several books already, but I want you to write yet another book, and this is a book on success. And I define success on the show as having the greatest positive impact on the world around you. You'll probably have 7, 10 chapters, but I want the chapter title for just 3 of your chapters for your book of success. What would be 3 chapter titles?
Be humble. Be authentic. Be humble. Be authentic. 3, acknowledge people who helped you. But those are the 3 I would say. And that's what I've learned in my life about being humble and understanding you got someplace because a lot of people helped you. I used to use the example, they said, what's supposed to be a hockey goalie, lacrosse goalie? I said, well, a hockey goalie can put a team on his shoulders and win a game. A good hockey percentage is 92%. I said, this day and age, a good lacrosse percentage is 50. You have to depend on the people in front of you. When I was young, I didn't think of that a little bit. You're there to make up for the mistakes of the guys in front of you, because they don't make a mistake, you're never going to get a shot taken on you. And you'll be amazed, Fred, how mentally that helped me so much.
That's Bob Rule, folks. Hall of Famer, Cornell alum, inventor. Just a terrific experience for me to listen to you talk about your history, your family, your friends, the lessons you learned. I could live my life over with what I know now. It would be a totally different life. Bob, I'm going to sign a copy of
thank you.
My career memoir and career advice, Start With Your Gift. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you mark it up. And
Fred, I'm not only going to mark it, I'm going to send you a couple copies of my stuff.
That's a wrap for this show. Thanks for listening. To hear more content like it, go to fredopie.com. If you have questions about advertising and sponsoring this show, contact us at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com.